menstrual cycle. Okay, so usually in exam what happens, either ovarian change or hormonal change or uterine changes are asked, or simply the graph is given and then the a particular graph showing the hormonal change or ovarian change is given, and you have to write the events that takes place in different phases. So today you have the graph, okay, in your textbook. So now you can bring your textbook and open the book, have the diagram in front of you, and now listen to me. I will separate all the events phase wise. Okay, ovarian changes, then uterine changes and hormonal changes separately I will tell you. Just please note down, and very briefly I will be discussing this one. Okay, so let me first tell you what is menstrual cycle. The menstrual cycle is otherwise known as reproductive cycle. Okay, so this menstrual cycle, it involves all the changes, that is starting from hormonal, ovarian and uterine changes during the reproductive phase is called menstrual cycle. And the first menstruation begins at puberty. At puberty, the first menstruation occurs, and that is known as menarche. Okay, and after menarche, in every 28 to 29 days, the menstruation is repeated. Okay, and the cycle of event starting from one menstruation till the next one is called the menstrual cycle. So one menstruation to next menstruation. So whatever events, so the events are called menstrual cycle. So what are these events? The event involves ovarian change, hormonal change, and uterine changes. Okay, and the menstrual cycle is divided into 3 phases, and these phases are the phases of menstrual cycle. The phases are menstrual phase. The first phase is menstrual phase. It is from day 1 to day 5. Okay. The next, number 2 is follicular phase. And this follicular phase is also known as proliferative phase, and it is from day 6 to day 13. Then third one is not a phase, it is a single day. Okay, so we cannot include it in the phase, but that is ovulation, a single event that takes place on a day. So since it is on a day, on a particular time, so it cannot be considered as a phase. It is not a duration of day. Okay, so this is day 14. Then fourth one is I mean third phase is luteal phase or secretory phase. It is from day 15 to day 28 or 29. So these are the different phases of a menstrual cycle. Now I will tell you the different changes that takes place during different phases. Let us first discuss the ovarian changes. So ovarian changes. In your book separately they are not given, so mostly you are getting confused. आप confused हो जाते हो. Okay, so let us first take menstrual phase. So during menstrual phase, what ovarian change takes place? In the ovary, the follicle starts developing. Please note down, children. Follicle starts developing. Then the next phase is, this is the first phase. The next phase is follicular phase. Menstrual phase is 1 to 5 days. So follicular phase, it is day 1 to 13. So during this phase, the development of several ovarian follicles starts developing. Several ovarian follicles start developing. Means primary follicles are already there, okay, but the primary follicle develops into secondary follicle, tertiary follicles, then Graafian follicle. Now so many follicles are developed, but out of them one follicle becomes mature and known as Graafian follicle. Okay. Now this production of follicle or development of follicle is stimulated by development of follicles stimulated by FSH, that is follicle stimulating hormones. And where from this is secreted? Secreted from anterior pituitary. Okay, so this is these are the ovarian changes that takes place during the follicular phase, that is from 1 to 13 days, and there is no significant change during menstrual phase, that is 1 to 5 days in the ovary. Now come to ovulation. So ovulation is not a phase, it is a single day. Now ovulation, this is on 14th day. So here what happens? The Graafian follicle ruptures and the ovum is released in secondary oocyte stage. ये याद रखो बच्चों, secondary oocyte stage. In secondary oocyte stage, this is called ovulation. Okay, and this ovulation is triggered by LH surge, means the secretion of luteinizing hormone, that is LH, is in its peak. सबसे ज़्यादा सिक्रेशन होता है इसी टाइम में, तब आपका क्या होता है, ओवुलेशन होता है. ओके, सो these are the events that takes place on the day of ovulation, during ovulation, that is on 14th day. Okay, now come to the next phase, fourth phase, luteal phase, that is 15 to 28 or 29 day. So here what happens, the ruptured follicle becomes corpus luteum. Okay, so after the egg is released from the corpus luteum, or from the Graafian follicle, the remaining tissue or the remaining cells form a structure that is known as corpus luteum. Okay, now this corpus luteum secretes progesterone. It secretes progesterone hormone, and if fertilization takes place, if fertilization takes place, then what happens? Progesterone secretion takes place continuously. Okay, that means the corpus luteum is active. Now if the fertilization do not occur, then what happens? The corpus luteum degenerates. Okay, so these are the event in the ovary that takes place during the luteal phase. And remember children, generally during menstrual cycle, one ovum from any one ovary is released. Okay, and if this month, in this menstrual cycle, the ovum is released from the left ovary, then in the next menstrual cycle the ovum will be released from the right ovary, and very rarely from the ova are released from both the ovaries. Now come to the hormonal changes. Let us see the hormonal changes. Separately I am giving you children, please note it down. Once again I am telling you. So let us first know what are the hormones involved in the process of menstrual cycle. Okay, so the hormones are FSH, that is follicle stimulating hormone, okay, and secreted from pituitary. Okay, then number 2, LH, that is luteinizing hormone, also secreted from pituitary. Okay, then next hormone is estrogen. It is secreted from the follicular cells of ovary. Then fourth one is progesterone. It is secreted from corpus luteum. Now let us see in different phase how the hormonal changes takes place. So what is the first phase? First phase is menstrual phase. In the menstrual phase, level of estrogen and progesterone are low. Okay, this is during menstrual phase, because the follicles are developing, so estrogens are not secreted in a significant amount. Okay, then FSH hormone starts increasing. The level of FSH increases. Okay, so what happens? The level of estrogen and progesterone is low, FSH starts increasing, and LH is not significant. Okay, now come to the second phase, that is follicular phase. In this phase, the FSH stimulates the follicle growth, so gradually increasing. Gradually the level is increasing. Now what happens to the estrogen? Also increases gradually, because the follicles are developing, so follicles are secreting the estrogen. So as the follicle develops, the amount of secretion of estrogen also increases. So this also secretion increases gradually. Okay, so these are the changes that takes place during the follicular phase, hormonal changes. Now come to ovulation. During ovulation, LH surge is there. I have already told you what is LH surge. That means the secretion of LH is at its peak. Okay, and this causes release of ovum or ovulation. Then next come to the last phase, that is luteal phase. In the luteal phase, the corpus luteum is already formed. After the release of the ovum, the remaining tissue of the Graafian follicle forms the corpus luteum. Now the corpus luteum secretes progesterone. So progesterone level is high, estrogen is moderate, and if no pregnancy, then what happens? Both decreases and menstruation starts. Okay, so these are the changes that takes place in the luteal phase. Now next come to the uterine changes. So uterine changes means the change in the endometrium. So uterine changes. So uterine changes involves the endometrial changes. So what happens during menstrual phase? Sorry, this is third one. So in menstrual phase, shedding of uterine lining or endometrium takes place. Shedding of uterine lining, that is endometrium, takes place. And the next event is, as the shedding takes place, the blood vessels are also shedded off, they are ruptured, so bleeding occurs. Next phase is proliferative phase. Or follicular phase. Okay, this is known as follicular phase because during this phase the development of the various types of follicle takes place in the ovary, so it is known as follicular phase. But why it is known as proliferative phase? Because during this phase the uterine membrane, that is endometrium, is proliferating or it is rebuilt and it thickens. Okay, so that's why it is known as proliferative phase. Now what are the events? The events are the endometrium is rebuilt because it was shedded in the previous cycle during menstruation. Now it is rebuilt and thickens. Okay, and this thickening of endometrium is stimulated by estrogen. These points are very, very important. Now come to secretory phase, luteal phase or secretory phase. Okay, so why it is known as luteal phase? Because during this phase corpus luteum is formed. Okay, now why it is known as secretory phase? Because the endometrium, excuse me, the endometrium becomes thick and vascular and glandular. As it is glandular, so it is secretory in nature. It is secretory in nature. Okay, that's why it is known as secretory phase. Now as the thickness of the endometrium increases, it prepares for implantation. Okay, and this process is controlled by progesterone. Okay, so these are the uterine, ovarian and hormonal changes that takes place during menstrual cycle. Okay, now at the age of like 50 or 55, the end of the menstrual cycle, menstrual cycle ceases at the age of around 50 years. The menstrual cycle ceases and this is called menopause. Okay. Now next come to fertilization. Now the ovum is released from the ovary. The sperm is injected into the, has been traveled up to the, into the female reproductive tract. Now the next important event is the fertilization. Okay. So now when the penis is inserted into the vagina, that is called insemination. Okay. So what is insemination? Insemination means release of semen by the penis into the vagina. Okay. Now once the semen, you know that the semen contains samples of sperms, and these sperms are having for a healthy fertilization. You know what is the percentage of sperm should have normal shape and size, and how much sperm should have vigorous motility. Okay. So now what happens, these sperms swims rapidly, passes through the cervix and enters into the uterus, and then from uterus it reaches the ampulla of fallopian tube. Okay. So fertilization takes place in the ampulla. आपके देखो ओल्ड बुक में दिया है एम्पुलरी इस्थमिक रीजन, ठीक है, दैट इज रॉन्ग. सो इट ऑलवेज टेक्स प्लेस इन द एम्पुला, not in the ampullary ischemic region. Okay. So now it has released up to the ampulla of the fallopian tube. Now if simultaneously the ovum also releases, ovum is also released by the ovary at the same time, if ovary releases the ovum simultaneously, then there is, and the ovum moves up to the ampulla, then there is chance of fertilization. Always fertilization is a matter of chance. Okay. So this can take place only the sperm and the ovum reach the ampulla simultaneously. Okay. And this is the reason why all copulations do not lead to fertilization and pregnancy. Okay. Now come to the process of fertilization. So what is fertilization? The fusion of sperm with an ovum is called fertilization. Okay. Now the ovum is released, ovum, or you can say the secondary oocyte. Suppose say this is the ovum or secondary oocyte that is released. When it is released, it is surrounded by zona pellucida, layer, and it is further surrounded by the cells, that is corona radiata. Some cells, not always, it is few corona radiata cells are also surrounding this one. Okay. So this is corona radiata. Okay. Now as you know, the number of sperm that is inseminated is always larger, but ovum released is only one. Okay. Now what happens, the sperm, many sperm comes in contact with the zona pellucida layer. Okay, here so many sperm come in contact with the zona pellucida layer, and but only one sperm that first comes in contact with the zona pellucida. So suppose this is A, B, C. Which sperm will penetrate into which sperm will penetrate the ovum? The B sperm will penetrate the ovum because it has first come in contact with the zona pellucida. Now this zona pellucida, when it comes in contact with when the sperm comes in contact with the zona pellucida, it induces certain changes in the membrane. Now what happens? Let me give you schematic presentation. Sperm, zona pellucida, when it comes in contact with the zona pellucida, it induces changes in the membrane. Which membrane? Zona pellucida and the egg membrane, and it blocks the entry of additional sperm, or you can say polyspermy. It prevents polyspermy. Okay, and now what happens? The polyspermy is prevented. Now how this sperm will penetrate into the ovum? Now what happens? The acrosome of the sperm releases the enzyme. It releases hydrolytic enzyme that is known as hyaluronidase. Okay, that name is not given in your textbook, that's why I am not giving you. And this digests the egg membrane लोकली, मतलब जहाँ पर ये कांटेक्ट में आता है वहीं पर इसको ये डाइजेस्ट कर देता है. देन व्हाट हैपेंस? The sperm enters into the ovum. Now the sperm enters into the ovum. Okay. Now what do you think? The whole sperm is entered into the ovum, or some part of the sperm is entering into the ovum? Yes, it is only the head. It is only the and the middle piece and tail remain outside. Okay, so now what happens? The head that contains the nucleus, the large nucleus is there. Now the nucleus along with the head is released into the cytoplasm of the, this enters into cytoplasm of ovum. Okay, now as the sperm enters into the, if you remember, I have told you that the second meiosis of oogenesis was arrested at metaphase 2. Now, once the sperm head enters into the cytoplasm of ovum, then what happens? The second, this meiotic division, the meiosis 2 is completed. Okay, so the meiotic division, it was which is unequal and it produces second polar body and the ovum. Now both the ovum and the second polar body are haploid. Okay. Now what happens? This ovum now fuses with the nucleus of sperm. Nucleus of sperm. So this is fusion and it forms a zygote, which is 2N. Okay. So this is how the fertilization takes place. Now let us discuss the development of the zygote into embryo and implantation. Okay. Now development of embryo and implantation. Okay. Now what is formed? Zygote. Where is it formed? It is formed in the, let me draw the diagram. Okay, so this is ovary. Now this is the ampullary region where fertilization has taken place, and this is the zygote. The zygote is formed here. Now what happens? This zygote passes through the isthmus. This portion is isthmus of fallopian tube, and as it passes through the isthmus, it undergoes mitotic division, and that is called cleavage. Now what happens? The zygote from the ampulla moves towards the isthmus and divides mitotically, and this process is called cleavage. Then this, after cleavage, the multicellular structure, or you can say the embryo, is formed, and cells of the embryo are called blastomeres. Okay. Now when this embryo is with 8 to 16 cell, means blastomere, is called morula. Remember, this cell number is very, very important. Now this morula starts moves towards uterus and divides to form blastocyst. Okay. Now the blastocyst is in the uterus. Now in the blastocyst, let me describe the structure of blastocyst. If this is the structure of blastocyst, so in the blastocyst generally 32 cell blastomeres are there. Now in the blastocyst, the blastomeres are arranged into a outer layer This outer layer is called trophoblast, and an inner group of cells. And these inner group of cells are attached to one side of the trophoblast, and these are called inner cell mass. Okay. Now this trophoblast gets attached to the endometrium. So suppose this is endometrial lining, and now what happens, the trophoblast attaches to the endometrium, and here is the inner cell mass. Okay. And after what happens after this attachment of the trophoblast into the endometrium, the inner cell mass differentiates and it forms the embryo. Now let us see what happens. Blastocyst has outer layer called trophoblast, and it has inner cell mass. The outer layer trophoblast attaches to the endometrium, whereas the inner cell mass differentiates into embryo. Okay. Now this what happens when this attaches, this trophoblast attaches to this endometrium, the endometrium then divides continuously and covers the blastocyst. It covers the blastocyst. Okay, here you can see it is covering the blastocyst. Now the endometrium divides continuously and cover the blastocyst. Okay. Now this process is called implantation, and it leads to pregnancy. Okay. Now let us come to the next topic, that is pregnancy and embryonic development. Now after implantation, pregnancy, after implantation, what happens? Suppose this is trophoblast, and in the trophoblast, finger-like projections occurs. It develops finger-like projections throughout, and these finger-like projections are called chorionic villi. This is called chorionic villi. Okay, and this is surrounded by the uterine tissue. This is surrounded by the uterine tissue. So here is the uterine tissue. So now they are interdigitated with each other. They are interdigitated. Okay, and they jointly form a structure, the chorionic villi plus the endometrial tissue. Together form a structure that is known as placenta. So what is this placenta? Placenta is the structural and functional unit between the mother and developing embryo. Okay, now let me summarize this one. Now what happens? Trophoblast develops finger-like projections. Then what happens? Sorry. The endometrial tissue interdigitates with the trophoblast and it forms placenta. Okay, so these finger-like projection are known as chorionic villi. Chorionic villi. Okay, now this placenta is the structural and functional unit between the mother and the developing fetus or embryo, whatever you can say. Now what is the function of placenta? So this is how the placenta is formed that I discussed. Now this placenta, it facilitates the supply of oxygen and nutrients to the embryo, removes carbon dioxide and excretory materials produced by the embryo. Okay, and how this placenta is connected to the mother's body? This placenta, this is very, very important. Placenta is connected to, so the placenta is formed by the interdigitation of trophoblast and the embryonic tissue. Now this, on the other side, the placenta is connected to the embryo. Okay, so this is connected to the embryo through umbilical cord. Very very important, single L. It is connected by the umbilical cord through which the transport of the substances takes place. Now another most important question comes in your exam. Describe how placenta acts as an endocrine tissue. Placenta is an endocrine tissue. So how it acts as endocrine tissue? Let me explain. Because it produces hormones. So what are those hormones? The hormones are HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. Okay, so HCG, then HPL, this H will be small h, okay, HCG, then HPL. So this HPL, this is otherwise known as, the full form is human placental lactogen. Then besides that, it secretes estrogen, progesterone, okay. Now what happens? This HCG, the presence of HCG in the urine confirms the pregnancy. Remember, presence of HCG confirms pregnancy. Okay, if it is present in the urine of any female, then it confirms. Okay, now there are 3 hormones. This is also one most important question. The 3 hormones secreted only during pregnancy. इसमें आप अक्सर कंफ्यूज हो जाते हो और सारे हार्मोन का नाम लिख देते हो, बिकॉज आपके बुक में बोल्ड लेटर में दिया हुआ है HCG, HBL, एस्ट्रोजन, प्रोजेस्टेरॉन. अरे एस्ट्रोजन एंड प्रोजेस्टेरॉन तो हर मेंस्ट्रुअल साइकिल में रिलीज होता है, बट कौन सा हार्मोन सिर्फ प्रेगनेंसी में रिलीज होता है? रिमेंबर, वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, दैट इज HCG, you know the full form, then HPL, and third one is relaxin. Okay, so this relaxin, it's secreted by ovary, and these 2 are secreted by placenta. Okay, now this during pregnancy, the level of some hormones are very high, like estrogen, progesterone or progestrogen, cortisol, prolactin, thyroxine, etc. Okay, so they are high, their secretion is high. And why this secretion is very high? Because it supports the fetal growth. Okay, and it is also helpful in maintaining the fetal growth and maintaining the pregnancy. Okay, now after implantation, what happens to the inner cell mass? Inner cell mass differentiates to form the embryo. Now this embryo has three layers. Okay, it has three layers, that is outer ectoderm, then uh, middle mesoderm, then endoderm. Okay, so first step, what happens? First formed, okay, then mesoderm, then formed. Okay, and very important, the inner cell mass, it has stem cell. What is stem cell? The cell that has potentiality to give rise to all types of tissues and organs. Okay, now next come to the parturition. No, before that we'll come to the gestation period. Okay, so now what happens during pregnancy? The development of fetus. Okay, let us see what happens. So the human during pregnancy, so pregnancy duration is 9 months. Okay, now after 1 month the embryo heart is formed. After 1 month. Okay, and by listening the heartbeat, we can know the presence of the presence of the growing fetus is noticed. Okay, and by the end of second month of pregnancy, end of second month of pregnancy, what are developed? The limbs and digits are formed, and by the end of 12 weeks, so 12 week is one trimester. It is one trimester. This is first trimester. So major organs are developed. Okay, now next fifth month, जो आपके बुक में हो वही मैं बोल रही हूँ, कोई एक्स्ट्रा नहीं बोल रही हूँ. फिफ्थ मंथ में आपका क्या होता है? appearance of hairs on head. Okay, and that is by the end of the 24 week, the body is covered with, by the end of 24th weeks, the body covered with fine hairs. Okay, and by the end of 9 months, the fetus is fully developed and ready for parturition. Now come to parturition. Parturition is a common question in the exam. Okay, so when the pregnancy is about 9 months, this period is called gestation period. Now what happens? Vigorous contraction of uterus takes place. But how it takes place? Okay, so the delivery of a child is called parturition. Okay, and it is induced by a complex neuroendocrine mechanism. Okay, now the signal for very important parturition originates from, remember, fully developed fetus and the placenta. आप एक भी लिखोगे इसमें से तो भी आपको फुल मार्क नहीं मिलेगा, अगर सिर्फ फिटस लिख दिया तो भी फुल मार्क नहीं मिलेगा. सो यू हैव टू मेंशन फुल्ली डेवलप्ड fetus and the placenta. Okay, and which induces, it induces mild contraction of uterus. Okay, and this mild contraction is known as fetal ejection reflex. Okay, and now this fetal ejection reflex stimulates the posterior pituitary to release oxytocin. Okay, now this oxytocin, it acts on uterine muscle and causes rapid contraction or vigorous contraction of uterus, and the expulsion of the baby takes place. Okay, now after the child is born, immediately for several days the mother's milk is fed to the infant. And now let us discuss lactation. Okay, now what happens? The female undergoes, the mammary gland of female undergoes differentiation during pregnancy, and it starts producing milk towards the end of pregnancy. Towards the end of pregnancy, and this is called lactation. Okay, and this the milk produced during the initial few days of lactation is called colostrum. Is called, okay, and this colostrum contains antibodies, okay, and which provides passive immunity. Remember, passive immunity to the infant. And besides that, it contains the nutrients which is required for the development of the baby. So this is all about the chapter, and I have already sent the question, year wise question of this chapter in WhatsApp group. Please go through the questions. First solve the questions, then answers are given below the questions, then you match the answers with your answer. Okay, so I hope you are not misutilizing your time, you are using your time judiciously. So with this, your today's session is over here. Thank you very much.